Okay, how are you today? I've been listening to the black and red conversation. I just wanted to add that I had a red wall in our house too. And I had done research, and it was actually in our kitchen because red encourages hunger and also conversation. So wherever there's red, there should be food and good conversation happening. So we're all good today. We've got a few people leaving at different times, and it looks like it's a smaller class. I know I heard from a couple that weren't feeling well or whatever that might be. There was quite a few missing from the morning class. So there must be a bug going around that I've somehow managed to avoid. So what is it this time?
I was gonna say, Karen, don't even say you've managed to avoid it. Don't even.
Uh-oh. Well,
yeah, because it seems like, yeah, it's just some random bug that's coming, and it's a very short-lived but intense flu.
Really? Okay. Kind of like the 24-hour thing, huh?
Well,
yeah,
and I
I've
don't
had
think.
a lot of.
Sorry?
Oh, I was gonna say, even on being on call, we had a lot of staff. They all had the same thing: heavy cough, fever, and headache.
Mine was not short-lived. I had it for like 3 weeks. I was dying.
Oh no. Oh, well, I guess I better take some vitamin C just to help me along here. I've been sick most of the winter, so I am done. I'm so done with it. So I'm just going to check in with you guys. Did we finish up the exercise last time? Okay. All right. Well, we are in really good time here. So I'll talk to you about some of what we're going to do next week in a bit, but yeah, we've got some opportunity to watch the few videos that I was mentioning, and we're also going to do some practice. So it is all good. Today we're going to start out by talking about motivation. And, you know, I've kind of been doing this all the way along, and the motivation piece is a person's willingness to learn and to actually want to do something different, or to be able to explore some new skills, or even just by way of performance improvement. Of course, people that are more willing to learn or to continue to improve their performance are going to catch on to things more quickly, and I mean, just their motivation level is going to be different, and their interest in it. So we know that there's a couple of different kinds of motivation. There's the extrinsic, and then there's the intrinsic motivation. And notice that I've got both of them saying the same thing. But they are different. So the extrinsic motivation is everything that you know, externally, that we can offer that can drive, let's say, performance in the work, in the situation. Pay raises, time off, bonuses, bonus checks, and even the potential threat of job loss can be motivators. However, they're not found to be nearly as effective as an intrinsic motivation, which are those things that we ourselves want and buy into and believe. And that's where coaching can be really helpful when someone is motivated to learn something new. It just puts them on a whole different field of movement forward, because that interest, that right kind of attitude makes the difference as to how they actually perform. And that is part of the reason for the movement more and more toward coaching, replacing management for the most part. And I know there's always going to be times where you're going to have to step into a manager role. And I know this is not going to change your world, because your jobs are very demanding and you often operate in crisis, which means that, you know, you're needing to think on the spot, and you're needing to sometimes tell versus encourage, I guess is what I would be looking at. But you need to tell people what they need to do versus helping them in that time to think for themselves. But the more that we can coach, the more that we're going to build people's transferable skills, as well as the opportunities for the growth to stay with them, whatever they've learned, and for them to want to learn more and do more. And the independence that comes with that is also important. But it's not so easy to find the ways and means to help people with that intrinsic motivation. And so, you know, that taking personal interest in your staff and helping them to move forward in areas and ways that they have an interest in is going to be your best options for actually helping them to excel in the work that they do. Doesn't mean they can ignore everything that's part of their job that they don't like. But if we can try to focus and work on and expand on the things that they enjoy and the talents that they have in those areas, of course, they're going to be more productive and they're going to have a better attitude around their job. So that is like where the extrinsic and the intrinsic motivation come into play. And we rely a lot on extrinsic motivation. And so I want you to start thinking more and more about the intrinsic. Like, I don't even think pay increases are a fair extrinsic motivator for staff in the same way that as how it's thought of here, because we're continually playing catch up. And I mean, we've never had or been at a place where, you know, we're in that real competitive area that we can be rewarding people overall for great performance. So that one I would kind of consider, you know, in our work in our area to not be one that we're as interested in, really focusing on as an extrinsic reward. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard of the book Drive. It's written by actually Dan Pink. And Drive is, I want to see if I've got mine up here or not in my favorite books. No, I don't see it there. Drive is a book about motivation and motivating staff. And actually this video is going to talk about the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation and the studies that have been done to demonstrate what definitely is more rewarding for a person and where you will get better performance, which we know is intrinsic. We've already talked about that, but he kind of gives the data and the support toward that way of thinking. And then we'll spend some time after this. I'll give you some time to get into small groups and actually explore your thoughts and talk about the principles that are provided in this video around when you coach. So how you can use some of those principles as you're coaching or as you're working with your staff, how those principles can be used. So I'm going to pop this on for everybody, and it's about 18 minutes long, and then we'll come back and have a conversation. So get comfy, but not too comfy, just after lunch, and we'll watch the video here.
I need to make a confession at the outset here. A little over 20 years ago, I did something that I regret, something that I'm not particularly proud of, something that in many ways I wish no one would ever know, but that here I feel kind of obliged to reveal. In the late 1980s, in a moment of youthful indiscretion, I went to law school. Now, in America, law is a professional degree. You get your university degree, then you go on to law school. And when I got to law school, I didn't do very well. To put it mildly, I didn't do very well. I, in fact, graduated in the part of my law school class that made the top 90% possible. Thank you. I never practiced law a day in my life. I pretty much wasn't allowed to. But today, against my better judgment, against the advice of my own wife, I want to try to dust off some of those legal skills, what's left of those legal skills. I don't want to tell you a story. I want to make a case. I want to make a hard-headed, evidence-based, dare I say, lawyerly case for rethinking how we run our businesses. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, take a look at this. This is called the candle problem. Some of you might have seen this before. It's created in 1945 by a psychologist named Carl Duncker. Carl Duncker created this experiment that's used in a whole variety of experiments in behavioral science. And here's how it works. Suppose I'm the experimenter. I bring you into a room. I give you a candle, some thumbtacks, and some matches. And I say to you, your job is to attach the candle to the wall so the wax doesn't drip onto the table. Now, what would you do? Many people begin trying to thumbtack the candle to the wall. Doesn't work. Some people, and I saw somebody kind of make the motion over here, some people have a great idea where they light the match, melt the side of the candle, try to adhere it to the wall. It's an awesome idea, doesn't work. And eventually, after 5 or 10 minutes, most people figure out the solution, which you can see here. The key is to overcome what's called functional fixedness. You look at that box and you see it only as a receptacle for the tacks, but you can also have this other function as a platform for the candle. Candle problem. Now, I want to tell you about an experiment using the candle problem done by a scientist named Sam Glucksberg, who's now at Princeton University in the US. This shows the power of incentives. Here's what he did. He gathered his participants and he said, I'm going to time you how quickly you can solve this problem. To one group, he said, I'm going to time you to establish norms, averages for how long it typically takes someone to solve this sort of problem. To the second group, he offered rewards. He said, if you're in the top 25% of the fastest times, you get $5. If you're the fastest of everyone we're testing here today, you get $20. Okay, now this is several years ago, adjusted for inflation. It's a decent sum of money for a few minutes of work. Okay, it's a nice motivator. Question, how much faster did this group solve the problem? Answer, it took them on average 3.5 minutes longer. 3.5 minutes longer. Now, this makes no sense, right? I mean, I'm an American. I believe in free markets. That's not how it's supposed to work, right? If you want people to perform better, you reward them, right? Bonuses, commissions, their own reality show, incentivize them. That's how business works, but that's not happening here. You've got an incentive designed to sharpen thinking and accelerate creativity, and it does just the opposite. It dulls thinking and blocks creativity. And what's interesting about this experiment is that it's not an aberration. This has been replicated over and over and over again for nearly 40 years. These contingent motivators. If you do this, then you get that. Work in some circumstances, but for a lot of tasks, they actually either don't work or often they do harm. This is one of the most robust findings in social science and also one of the most ignored. I spent the last couple of years looking at the science of human motivation, particularly the dynamics of extrinsic motivators and intrinsic motivators. And I'm telling you, it's not even close. If you look at the science, there is a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And what's alarming here is that our business operating system, think of the set of assumptions and protocols beneath our businesses, how we motivate people, how we apply our human resources. It's built entirely around these extrinsic motivators, around carrots and sticks. That's actually fine for many kinds of 20th century tasks. But for 21st century tasks, that mechanistic reward and punishment approach doesn't work, often doesn't work, and often does harm. Let me show you what I mean. So Glucksberg did another experiment similar to this, where he presented the problem in a slightly different way, like this up here. Okay? Attach the candle to the wall so the wax doesn't drip onto the table. Same deal. You were timing for norms. You were incentivizing. What happened this time? This time, the incentivized group kicked the other group's butt. Why? Because when the tasks are out of the box, it's pretty easy, isn't it? If-then rewards work really well for those sorts of tasks, where there's a simple set of rules and a clear destination to go to. Rewards, by their very nature, narrow our focus, concentrate the mind. That's why they work in so many cases. And so for tasks like this, a narrowed focus where you just see the goal right there, zoom straight ahead to it, they work really well. But for the real candle problem, you don't want to be looking like this. The solution's not over here. The solution's on the periphery. You want to be looking around. That reward actually narrows our focus and restricts our possibility. Let me tell you why this is so important. In Western Europe, in many parts of Asia, in North America, in Australia, white-collar workers are doing less of this kind of work and more of this kind of work. That routine, rule-based, left-brain work, certain kinds of accounting, certain kinds of financial analysis, certain kinds of computer programming has become fairly easy to outsource, fairly easy to automate. Software can do it faster. Low-cost providers around the world can do it cheaper. So what really matters are the more right-brain, creative, conceptual kinds of abilities. Think about your own work. Think about your own work. Are the problems that you face, or even the problems we've been talking about here, are those kinds of problems, do they have a clear set of rules and a single solution? No, the rules are mystifying. The solution, if it exists at all, is surprising and non-obvious. Everybody in this room is dealing with their own version of the candle problem. And for candle problems of any kind, in any field, those if-then rewards, the things around which we've built so many of our businesses, don't work. Now, I mean, it makes me crazy. And this is not, here's the thing, this is not a feeling, okay? I'm a lawyer, I don't believe in feelings. This is not a philosophy. I'm an American, I don't believe in philosophy. This is a fact, or as we say in my hometown of Washington, D.C., a true fact. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let me marshal the evidence here, because I'm not telling you a story, I'm making a case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, some evidence. Dan Ariely, one of the great economists of our time, he and 3 colleagues did a study of some MIT students. They gave these MIT students a bunch of games that involved creativity and motor skills and concentration. And they offered them for performance 3 levels of rewards: small reward, medium reward, large reward. Okay? Do really well, you get the large reward, on down. What happened? As long as the task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses worked as they would be expected. The higher the pay, the better the performance. Okay? But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to poorer performance. Then they said, okay, let's see if there's any cultural bias here. Let's go to Madurai, India and test this. Reward standard of living is lower. In Madurai, a reward that's modest by North American standards is more meaningful there. Same deal, a bunch of games, 3 levels of rewards. What happens? People offered the medium level of rewards, did no better than people offered the small rewards. But this time, people offered the highest rewards. They did worst of all. In 8 of the 9 tasks we examined across 3 experiments, higher incentives led to worse performance. is this some kind of touchy-feely socialist conspiracy going on here? No, these are economists from MIT, from Carnegie Mellon, from the University of Chicago. And do you know who sponsored this research? The Federal Reserve Bank of the United States. That's the American experience. Let's go across the pond to the London School of Economics, LSE, London School of Economics, alma mater of 11 Nobel laureates in economics, training ground for great economic thinkers like George Soros and Friedrich Hayek and Mick Jagger. Just last month, economists at LSE looked at 51 studies of pay for performance plans inside of companies. Here's what the economists there said. We find that financial incentives can result in a negative impact on overall performance. There's a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And what worries me as we stand here in the rubble of the economic collapse is that too many organizations are making their decisions, their policies about talent and people based on assumptions that are outdated, unexamined, and rooted more in folklore than in science. And if we really want to get out of this economic mess, and if we really want high performance on those definitional tasks of the 21st century, the solution is not to do more of the wrong things, to entice people with a sweeter carrot or threaten them with a sharper stick. We need a whole new approach. The good news about all this is that the scientists who've been studying motivation have given us this new approach. It's an approach built much more around intrinsic motivation, around the desire to do things because they matter, because we like it, because they're interesting, because they're part of something important. And to my mind, that new operating system for our businesses revolves around three elements: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy, the urge to direct our own lives. Mastery, the desire to get better and better at something that matters. And purpose, the yearning to do what we do in the service of something larger than ourselves. These are the building blocks of an entirely new operating system for our businesses. I want to talk today only about autonomy. In the 20th century, we came up with this idea of management. Management did not emanate from nature. Okay, management isn't, it's not a tree, it's a television set. Okay, somebody invented it. And it doesn't mean it's going to work forever. Management is great. Traditional notions of management are great if you want compliance. But if you want engagement, self-direction works better. Let me give you some examples of some kind of radical notions of self-direction. And what this means, you don't see a lot of it, but you see the first stirrings of something really interesting going on. Because what it means is, it means paying people adequately and fairly, absolutely. Getting the issue of money off the table, and then giving people lots of autonomy. Let me give you some examples. How many of you have heard of the company Atlassian? Okay, looks like less than half. Atlassian is an Australian software company, and they do something incredibly cool. A few times a year, they tell their engineers, go for the next 24 hours and work on anything you want. As long as it's not part of your regular job, work on anything you want. So the engineers use this time to come up with a cool patch of code, to come up with an elegant hack. Then they present all of these stuff that they've developed to their teammates, to the rest of the company, in this wild and woolly all hands meeting at the end of the day. And then, being Australians, everybody has a beer. They call them FedEx days. Why? Because you have to deliver something overnight. It's not bad. It's a huge trademark violation, but it's pretty clever. That one day of intense autonomy has produced a whole array of software fixes that might never have existed. And it's worked so well that Atlassian has taken it to the next level with 20% time, done famously at Google, where engineers can spend 20% of their time working on anything they want. They have autonomy over their time, their task, their team, their technique. Okay, radical amounts of autonomy. And at Google, as many of you know, about half of the new products in a typical year are birthed during that 20% time. Things like Gmail, Orchid, Google News. Let me give you an even more radical example of it. Something called the results-only work environment, the ROW, created by 2 American consultants in place at about a dozen companies around North America. In a row, people don't have schedules. They show up when they want. They don't have to be in the office at a certain time or any time. They just have to get their work done. How they do it, when they do it, where they do it is totally up to them. Meetings in these kinds of environments are optional. What happens? Almost across the board, productivity goes up, worker engagement goes up, worker satisfaction goes up, turnover goes down. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. These are the building blocks of a new way of doing things. Now, some of you might look at this and say, that sounds nice, but it's utopian. And I say, nope. I have proof. In the mid-1990s, Microsoft started an encyclopedia called Encarta. They had deployed all the right incentives, They paid professionals to write and edit thousands of articles. Well-compensated managers oversaw the whole thing to make sure it came in on budget and on time. A few years later, another encyclopedia got started. Different model, right? Do it for fun. No one gets paid a cent or a euro or a yen. Do it because you like to do it. Now, if you had, just 10 years ago, if you had gone to an economist anywhere and said, hey, I have these two different models for creating an encyclopedia. If they went head to head, who would win? 10 years ago, you could not have found a single sober economist anywhere on planet Earth who would have predicted the Wikipedia model. This is the titanic battle between these two approaches. This is the Ali Frazier of motivation, right? This is the thriller in Manila, all right? Intrinsic motivators versus extrinsic motivators. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose versus carrots and sticks. And who wins? Intrinsic motivation, autonomy, mastery, and purpose in a knockout. Let me wrap up. There's a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And here's what science knows. One, those 20th century rewards, those motivators we think are the natural part of business, do work, but only in a surprisingly narrow band of circumstances. Two, those if-then rewards often destroy creativity. Three, the secret to high performance isn't rewards and punishments, but that unseen intrinsic drive, the drive to do things for their own sake, the drive to do things because they matter. And here's the best part. We already know this. The science confirms what we know in our hearts. So if we repair this mismatch between what science knows and what business does, if we bring our notions of motivation into the 21st century, if we get past this lazy, dangerous ideology of carrots and sticks, we can strengthen our businesses, we can solve a lot of those candle problems, and maybe we can change the world. I rest my case.
So there you go, the research behind the information. And there's his book, if anybody's interested in reading it. It is quite interesting what he has to say. And it's just a matter of how do we apply it. And like I said, that's part of why coaching has really become one of the options for managers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 15 minutes to talk about this. So to have a conversation around what was there and what and how you might look at it within the work that you do. So I'll put you into your groups and I'll give you the 15 minutes to chat about it. And then we'll come back and discuss some of what thoughts you had. So anybody have questions or are we good to go? Good to go? Okay. I'll see you in 15.
Hi, Chris. How are you? Not very good, I'm afraid. I've got a problem, a real problem, and I'm getting really.
All right, I think everybody's back. So how'd it go? Who would like to share some of the thoughts that came up in your group before I start asking people? Anybody?
Well, I'll start.
okay.
We had a lovely chat. We talked a lot about how with COVID or like prior to COVID, then post-COVID, that we've really lost those opportunities during COVID to have those togetherness. And I shared as a management group, we used to have surprisingly enough, we called it a FedEx Day. And we had a different director before Pat, and so she would open up her house and we would go to her house and she would make food and she would and it was a very relaxed kind of a almost, it was a little bit guided, but it was kind of a free-for-all. And what do you want to talk about? And it was just kind of this group think, and then just throwing out ideas and coming up with, some potential things that we could do. And it was like, it was always a really nice day. We really felt engaged. And now we don't since, you know, COVID and stuff, we haven't been able to do those things. And it really feels like when we're talking about external or intrinsic, and I'm like, yeah, I feel like money is the thing, because we're lacking that other piece. So I'm like, yeah, no, I want money, right? So because I'm not getting that other piece. So I guess maybe I shouldn't say that, but yeah. So we had a really nice conversation, and we talked about some of the challenges and some of the, if there's opportunities, and how could we make that work. But
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up, Irene, because it came up this morning as well about the FedEx days. So obviously something that was extremely valued when it was being done for the same reasons that you said. You know, that opportunity just to step away and to look at how things are going, but more importantly, to think about the future and potentially, you know, given the and being able to get creative about some things, because you're just in a different space and time.
yeah, well, and some of it was often kind of that blue sky stuff. Like, so it was stuff that like was kind of really out there. But when you have several people having a conversation, there's bits and pieces. And part of in our conversation that we had was that often when you're having those conversations, people that have been around longer will shut down ideas because they'll go, well, we did that before, you know, we did that, it didn't work. And I've learned that sometimes you need to say, yeah, you know what, everything's got a time and a place, and maybe that wasn't the time and the place. So, you know, is there an opportunity that we could take some of that and then kind of build into it? So it's kind of shifting a little bit. So.
Well, and actually Simon Sinek, the guru that I really like, with his sociology, social psychology, whatever you want to call it, he initially came onto the scene with talking about innovation and how innovation happens, and that it really happens by just sitting back, observing, and having conversation. And so he's moved it now toward like cell phones, technology and stuff, but it's really a very important piece that's been lost, you know, that instead of engaging in conversation, people are choosing to do other things, when in fact you can get the most out of a conversation or the opportunity just to talk, which we have so little time to do in our work environments today, which we really should find time for, because there's so many benefits. Team building of team, just the collaboration and the sharing of ideas and thoughts, and can have a huge impact. Nicola, I think you were wanting to say something as well.
We were just talking about, I mean, it's nice on paper, but in sort of our world, it doesn't necessarily work, like the working from home, picking your own hours, that.
But what if you could offer? What kinds of things would you offer? If those things aren't possible.
I was in Nicola's group and we tried brainstorming ideas, and I honestly couldn't think of anything aside from like getting my staff to pick their own schedules. That was kind of like the only thing that I could think of, but then in reality that wouldn't work because I have 11 staff and everyone is going to have different needs and demands, and so someone is not always going to be happy. But yeah, I couldn't think of anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so, and I think that that's where sometimes, you know, just being able to free flow and think, it presents some opportunities. I really understand the limitations that we are under, but the other curiosity is, have we ever really, like, have you sat down and had a similar conversation with your staff and asked them, you know, what kinds of things could we potentially do? Now, again, you could get them all excited about stuff and then it just gets poo-pooed, right? But some of those conversations can generate some of the most creative opportunities for thinking and doing. But what about the intrinsic motivators and the use of of coaching, or the use of, you know, figuring out what people's own wants and needs are, and then trying to build on those. Who has done that with their staff? Really had a conversation with them about what they want in 3 years. What do they want? And what do they need from you or the organization to get it?
I think I've had it with one of my long-term employees.
Mhm.
All my staff are very new to the field and to this role. So I think they're just currently trying to survive and figure out how to do that. But I know that my long-term employee that I've had a similar conversation with is they value the organization. They want to move up. They want opportunities to move up. They want to take on more responsibility. And that's how they feel empowered in their role, and how they feel like they can make a difference if opportunities to join external committees or committees within the agency come up. We'll always nominate her if that's what she wants. And she's made herself very well known within the agency by doing that. And I think that has helped give her a lot of value. And so I don't know if that really answers the question, but that's how I kind of feel.
It does. It definitely does, because I think when you give the opportunity there for people that are really committed to the organization, they're going to step up and say, this is what I want, right? This is what I ideally would like to see. But even if it's not part of being in the organization, there are ways and means that you can support them to get their external needs met that are going to actually help them to be more satisfied in their job and more committed to the organization overall. And we've talked about that before as well. But Brittany, it'd be interesting to revisit that, because I don't know when you had that conversation, but what's the next step? Because, you know, there's got to be a movement forward, and that's where we can help as coaches. Because what's the goal? I want to move into this position. What's the plan, right? And then helping them to, you know, look, or helping them to uncover the kinds of things that they can do to move their plan forward.
I certainly had that early in my years with CSS.
Uh-huh.
I had some wonderful supervisors, and that was a big focus. And they helped me all along the way.
So say more about that, Elaine. Like,
our supervisions were much more I don't know if clinical is the right word, but much more in depth, much more, you know, learn about yourself, reflective in the work. And then, you know, as I moved over and worked with group care and things like that, like the time is so limited sometimes. It's hard to really have a lot of that. You're so focused on fires and putting things out. So when you get it, it's great, but there's not enough of it.
So, you know, a question that I have in my head is almost like, what would your work environment look like if you weren't constantly putting fires out? Because that is almost a goal, right? A goal of, you know, what would that look like? What are we trying to move toward? Just because of how much crisis is a part of what you do, how can you carve out some time in all of that to operate with some in being proactive, I guess, if that's fair to say. I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
I think it can be really hard to be proactive because there's always something that comes up. Like we had a situation where last spring we had planned a whole day that we were just going to bake and just spend some time together. And lo and behold, crisis hit that took, I don't know, a few months before it settled. So even when you plan it with your best intentions, you can't predict when those crises are going to happen. So it's just,
So
I
do we,
guess, finding that 10 minutes to try and embrace it when you can.
so do we stop planning and operate in crisis?
No, you don't stop planning. It's just when there's a crisis going on, a lot of times your total focus is that. Right. So it's like, and then once the crisis is over, then there's other things and trying to play catch up, and you're checking in with your staff because staff are exhausted. So you still plan it, you still aim for it and hope for the best.
I think it's like, it's not just crisis, because we can all respond to crisis. It's the stress that comes with the crisis that makes your brain not able to manage beyond the crisis that you're dealing with. Like it's like like when I'm dealing with a significant crisis, I cannot I cannot accomplish anything else other than dealing with the crisis. There's obviously, like, you're not dealing with a crisis 24/7. It's a stress thing. It's just like how the stress impacts your brain, and how there's no room in my brain capacity to take time aside to blue sky moment. It's just a function of stress, I think, in this job and the people that we work with.
Mhm. Okay.
It's not a bad point, Kara. Like, I know if I think about that, like when I think about, for me, when I'm really stressed, I am not creative. I can't be.
Well,
Mhm.
the one thing that really hit home is when we're stressed, like, Kara, I love that you were like, when you're stressed, that's where your brain is. In our field and what we do, we give so much of ourselves. So even when there's not a crisis, you're still constantly giving, right? So when there is a crisis or something that's, just stressful going on, whatever it is, there are days where you just have nothing left.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
to be able to process, okay, like if I can't even think of 10 minutes of my own self-care, right? Like that's where it's hard. Like, but I do find I try to plan more events and fun things for the staff, and especially when we're going through a rough time. And I do neglect my own, right? But it's it's your brain capacity.
Karen?
Oh, you can ask. Absolutely. Again, I lost all track of time, Rebecca. I'm sorry. Get on a game. So actually, let's take 10 minutes, guys, for sure. For sure.
Okay, we got to stop taking breaks. My dogs keep thinking they can come on my laps. Jake is like trying to climb on my computer. He's like, but Mom, I don't understand.
Yes, I understand, Janine. I haven't moved for fear that if I do, my dogs are going to think it's playtime.
I know. I let them outside and I was like, okay, guys, let's go pee. And now they think that they need to be on my lap. They're a pain.
I love them.
They are such a pain. Oh. They do. They think it's playtime all the time. Oh, see, yeah, he sat on my lap. Let's see if the computer will sit on him.
That's okay. He can join.
Oh, yeah.
Learn something.
He's just, they're so weird. Oh. I missed
Okay, everyone, maybe come on back. I think that was kind of probably a little bit of a hint too that we've talked long enough about that. So we're going to move on. And I was trying to do a bit of coaching. That was sort of my motivator for that. I don't know if anyone caught it, but I was actually trying to do a bit of coaching in that. Since nobody kind of just is stepping up and saying, yeah, coach me, coach me. If anybody wants to be coached today, by the way, I'd be happy to do it. I think we're at the end of this, actually. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to do actually is we're going to skip over the communication, which is really short and sweet, and it's been very repetitive. from all the other sessions. So it's like, you know this already, but I do want to show you a video in relation to that. I want to go on to the coaching models. What I want to do is I want to talk with you a bit about coaching models. And I wanted to show you a couple of videos using the GROW model during this session. And then next session, I'm going to show you the model that I use. You'll be able to see it presented, and I'll talk with you a bit about it. I actually don't have it included in our material because it's quite involved. There's a lot of detail to it. I think though, in order for you to see what's going on in the video and to be able to kind of pinpoint what I'm doing, you have to have some understanding around the model. So, in fact, all of the models use some of the same core areas. The model that we're talking about today, which is the GROW model, is very focused on performance improvement. And some of the other models, and you can do also development. So whatever that might look like, personal development, when they're actually moving beyond where they're at today and wanting to go further. There's a lot more conversation potentially involved in that versus you just assisting someone to figure out what they need to do to improve their performance. That's very specific and very to the point. And that's when the GROW model works quite well, is when you're looking at something like that, or when someone's feeling really, as we talked about, everybody quite feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and that you just can't really think through something. The GROW model works really well as well. So we'll be paying attention to that. So we're actually looking at page 32 is where we'll start. And then I'll show you the videos and we'll go from there. Okay. So there's two different models that I just am pulling up here that are quite commonly used or known about. And as I mentioned, one is the growth model and the other is like the Benning performance coaching model. And both of them are really around moving someone forward quite quickly. So it's like quickly identifying a goal and then helping them to move that forward. I don't know if you remember, it was through our problem solving that I showed you a really quick video on the 5 whys. And so it was how you continue to look forward around and get to what's really underlying someone's concern and problem by asking 5 very relatable whys. So you might ask them a question about something like, and they may say, well, I'm really challenged by doing this. And it's like, well, why do you feel so challenged? And they give you a response. And then based on what that response is, you ask another really relevant question to the next why, and you just keep going until you have got to a place of it really being core. And it's the real, I guess, the meat and potatoes of what's going on. So that's another way that you can identify what might quickly be going on. It doesn't tell you what to do about it or help them to necessarily know what to do about it. But if you remember, when we talked about problem solving, the first thing that you really need to be able to identify is what is the problem. And that requires conversation. It requires making sure that all things have been explored and thought about, because what we may be saying is the problem may not actually be the problem. So some of what you can do in your coaching is helping people to get to that place of having explored everything, coming up with an idea specifically around what might be going on for them, without us making assumptions around that, because again, we want to be as objective as possible and not be in the role of supervisor where we are telling people what to do. Okay, so let's just take a quick peek at these things. So generally in coaching, just like in problem solving, there's things that you cover off on. And one is to be able to identify, like, what is the skills to be taught and learned. So what is it that's needed? You know, what does that look like for that person? And again, the assessing of that is also a part of it. So whether, and again, this is performance coaching. So whether that is that you've seen through observation or you've had the conversation around it to know specifically what is missing or why something isn't happening or what they're struggling with around it, then again, it's help. The best way is not to tell them. The best way is to engage them and ask them. So what do you see yourself struggling with? And they tell you something and it's like, okay, so what has you saying that? And you keep going and going and going until, you know, they've really thought it through and have identified exactly what it is that they may be struggling with. So that's part of that whole assessing piece. And at some point, it's like confirming their willingness and interest to be coached, to actually be supported in this way. There has to be goals and some outcomes. So one of the things that we do is help them to set up a SMART goal, because they may say, well, this is what I want. I want to be better at presenting. But that doesn't say a lot about what is it that they actually want, right? Just as we did in the force field analysis way back when, what is your ideal outcome? You know, what does that look like at the end of the day? How will you know that you've gotten there, that you've gotten to the place of presenting well? What will that look like? And it's like, you know, specific, measurable. So, you know, how are you going to measure that? And, oh, I forgot the A, SMAR is realistic and time-based. Anybody remember what the A is? Specific.
Attainable.
Sorry?
Attainable.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. You got her. So attainable. So realistic and realistically, and it's attainable. So you help them to do that. So they may have an overall big goal, and then so that attainability is breaking it down into steps, which could be one session in and of itself. Just clarify the goal and then break it down into sub goals to know where to begin and where the focus should start. Again, remember, it's always about them making decisions. So you may have some tools, which you're going to get the toolkit for this week, so you can take a peek at it. So you may get you'll have some tools that you can pull from, or you may have to do some research, or part of what may need to be done is they do research. And it's like, you know, maybe you need to research some of the ways that you can be more effective in this. And is that, you know, they may say that I could research, and it's like, okay, so is that something that you could see doing within this next week? Yeah, I could see doing that. So again, it's all about encouraging them to come up with the thoughts and ideas around it. Always discussing the what and the how. So we're getting into the action plan, right? So what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? When is it going to be done by? And how will you know that it's done? And potentially, who's going to hold you accountable? Or how are you going to hold yourself accountable to remove yourself from having to be that person? If it's performance stuff, there could be an element of modeling, of imitation, of role playing, some of those things. There's always that feedback and encouragement component, because that is what really helps to support the coaching. That you are encouraging, that you are supporting them in their learning, that you're letting them know that they are doing a good job and being specific about it. And potentially observation of them in that role and measuring the outcomes of how they're doing. And again, it's like an evaluation after the fact. So this morning we talked a lot, and I would imagine it's a concern of yours too. We spent time talking about the fact that we don't have time to coach all the time. Of course, when you're in crisis, I'm not saying this, you coach every time there's a problem. When you're in crisis and like something has to be done within the next hour, and they're struggling with what to do first, second, or third, you may just have to step in and tell them. But then after the fact, you can meet with them and talk to them. And it's like, okay, so the situation that came up this last week, how did you feel about the outcome? What could you suggest be done differently? What would you have done if you were given this to just do, and why? So you can help after the fact just by helping them to evaluate their actions and their thinking process, so that next time they may be in a better place to be able to do that. And then there is just the disengagement, because when we coach, we get in, we support, they learn, and we step away. So because it's goal focused, once the goal's been achieved, the outcome's been achieved, then we step away, and potentially maybe there's a new focus, maybe not at that point. Okay, questions or comments? Next week, we're going to look at some of the tools. When I send it to you this week, then we'll look at some of the tools that I put within the toolkit, and just have a bit of a conversation around some of those pieces. We're going to look at this video next week. Unless, actually, just hang on a second here. Yeah, we'll look at this video next week, and then we'll be following up on the other stuff next week as well that we skipped over in that. This is all kind of new pieces for me, the inputting of some actual examples in that, because there isn't a lot to choose from, because you can't role play coaching. So there has to be willing participants to do this. And again, everybody that does it, they're learning as well. So there isn't the perfect one that you will watch and see. So with the growth model, it's GROW. It's grow model, not growth model, but it's called the grow model. I put growth in there. So you establish a goal. So that's part of helping them to establish that SMART goal. You examine the current realities of their situation and some of their thinking around that. Now, if you don't have time to explore their current thinking reality. So for example, you know, someone is saying, I really need to learn how to better use Zoom, how to effectively use Zoom. And part of this, what they say to you is, well, you know, everybody else seems to be so much better than me in working on a computer. Well, that's a pretty extreme perspective. And it's, how do we know that that is true? There likely isn't truth to it. It's just part of that perception that they have come to, that you may want to ask some questions around. So what has you believing that everyone is able to do this better than you? And so they may present some thoughts, and then you go from there, and you just continue to ask questions until maybe they realize, maybe they don't, that, oh, you know, that's really not true. They may be struggling with their own things around it. It's just what I'm looking for is exactly what I'm struggling with. So it's helping them to see things more objectively as well as they're going through some of this, especially if they say things like always, every time, everyone else does it better, or whatever it looks like. When they put those extreme parameters around it, then it's something to explore with them, because their perspective is very much one-sided or one way that is likely not true. And they may need to see that in order for them to move forward. But the other current realities could just be the realities of the situation. So where are you at right now? And, what are you stuck on? Why, in your mind, what or why have you not been able to move forward? Whatever that looks like, it's like, where are they currently at? And then it's about also exploring the options. So, that this is some of the things that you struggle with, or where you really feel you need to focus your time and energy. So what things do you think you can do around that? And you just keep asking questions again until they've really explored it fully. and come up with 1 or 2 ideas, 3 ideas around what they can do about it. And make sure at this point you're also action planning. So setting up what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, all of that kind of stuff, just as you did with that goal. And even getting to the point of what is one part of this that you feel you can move forward in this next week. And you ask the questions around that as well, such as, okay, so what can you move forward? When are you going to start? How are you going to know that it's done? Who's going to hold you accountable? So it's a constant moving forward to more detail and understanding, not just making it a generalization and a sweeping idea of what they can do and then leaving that with them. So the more detail that you can put behind an action and the goal, the more that they will know and can move it forward and attain it on their own with satisfaction. And then the will forward is their interest in actually moving it forward, which is some of what we just talked about. So how are you going to go about doing that? And when are you going to start? So all of those pieces are part of having the will to move forward, to move whatever it is forward. Do you have any questions? So I'm going to show you this video, and then I've got 2 more videos I want to show you, okay, that are actual examples of what we're talking about. So let's take a look at this GROW model and what is described here.
Many managers, when coaching their staff, don't know where to start. Others do, but when they're coaching their team members, it has no structure and therefore becomes a waste of both people's time. The GROW coaching model was created by 3 business coaches in the 1980s and was designed to provide a basic structure for coaching. Let's take a closer look at how you can use the GROW coaching model during coaching sessions with your team. The G stands for goal. When using the GROW coaching model, you must start with the end in mind and define what your goal is going to be from the beginning. It's essential when setting this goal that the goal is SMART, which means it is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. An example of a SMART goal would be, I'm going to increase the sales I make over the next quarter by 25%. When setting these goals, the kind of coaching questions you need to be asking are, what is it you want to achieve over the next 6 months? And what is the ideal achievement for you at work over the next quarter? The R in GROW stands for reality. What is the current reality that the person you're coaching finds themselves in at this moment in time? When setting goals, it is essential to take stock of where you are now and where the start point is in achieving the desired goal. When examining the current reality, the kind of questions you need to be asking are, where are you now in relation to your goal? And what progress have you made so far in achieving your goal? The O stands for options. After exploring the current reality, you have to discuss with the person you're coaching all of the options possible for them to achieve the goal that they have set. You must spend time analysing and brainstorming ways and methods that will help your team member to achieve this. By all means, offer advice and make suggestions, but you must ensure that it is them producing the ideas. You can prize this information from them by asking questions such as, how have you tackled a similar situation before? And what can you do to bridge the gap between your current reality and the goal that you have set? Lastly, the final letter of the GROW coaching model stands for way forward. So you've set your goal, examined where your team member is currently at, and the options they have in achieving their goal. Now you must discuss the way forward. This part of the discussion involves you gaining a commitment from your team member so that they will perform specific actions on a consistent and regular basis to achieve their goal. One way of achieving that goal, for example, would be to make a certain amount of prospecting telephone calls a day. Questions you will need to ask to get your team member to produce and commit to these actions could include, what actions will you take to achieve this? And how will you know that you've been successful? So when next coaching a member of your team, consider using the GROW coaching model and covering the following points. Firstly, set your goal. Start with the end in mind and make sure it's smart. Secondly, examine the current reality and determine where the start point in achieving the goal is. Next, discuss the options. Brainstorm and analyze the methodology in achieving this goal. And finally, set the way forward. Finalize actions and gain that commitment from your team member.
Okay, so that is in a synopsis what this is about. And next week, I want each of you to bring something that you can be coached around when it comes to the GROW model. Because I will put you into pairs and you will have opportunity to coach someone in this. And so I want you to think of something, because if you don't have something, then someone's going to miss out on the coaching. And I'm going to put you into pairs, and then potentially we'll flip around, and then the other person will have opportunity for themselves as well. Okay. And then you can practice some of the technique that goes into this process here. And of course, it has to be real, because this kind of stuff you can't role play. You can't think about how, like, all the questions, all the things that go into it that might be affecting you personally. So it has to be something that's real for you, whether it is professional or something goal related for your home life or whatever it might be. Just feel comfortable talking about it. Okay, are we good? Everybody knows their homework? All right, so the next, actually the next part of this is a video on just seeing in action, but both of these videos kind of stop when they have done one of the pieces of the GROW model. So we're going to, so they're not as great as just watching through someone actually moving it forward.
Hi, Chris. How are you? Not very good, I'm afraid.
I'll just make this bigger.
I've got a problem, a real problem, and I'm getting really stressed about it.
It doesn't sound good. Tell me what the problem is.
Well, I've got this report to write, and it's got to be done by next Friday. And I put some time aside to do it, but I just haven't managed to get around to doing it. There's so much going on at the moment. I've been doing lots of trainings. I've got lots of meetings. There just isn't time. And well, now, because next week's so busy, I can't see how I'm even going to get this report done.
How big is this report?
Well, it's going to take about half a day to do. It's about 9 to 10 pages.
Right, okay. So just clarify for me exactly what has to be done by when?
Right, so I've got a 9 to 10 page report that's going to take about half a day to do, and it has to be done by a week on Friday.
Okay, so that sounds quite a lot considering what you've got on. Just tell me a bit about how your week is at the moment. What's going on for you?
It's crazy. I've got Monday and Tuesday, I'm out doing team building with groups of people all over the place. Wednesday, I've got a meeting in Barnstable in the morning, Tiverton in the afternoon. That means I don't even get into the office until Thursday. And then, of course, when I get in there, I'll have all my emails and my phone calls and things to do. Plus, my line manager wants to see me. So I can't even see myself getting this started until Thursday afternoon at the very earliest. And that's too late. I'm going to be so stressed.
That does sound pretty tight for time, I have to say.
It is.
Okay, so why don't we just think about all the possible options of ways that you could potentially achieve this? Now, it could be crazy options, okay? It doesn't mean you have to go follow through with all of them. We just want to get all of the different possibilities out on the table. So start off by telling me, what are the things that you could do to get this done?
Well, I suppose I could not do the report. That would be nice.
Okay.
I don't think that would go down very well though.
Right. What else?
Well, I suppose I could ask my boss to put back the deadline. And again, I don't think that would look very good.
Okay, so put back the deadline. I'm just going to note them down as we go through. Okay.
Okay. What did I do? Okay, I've got the meetings on Wednesday. I could either cancel one or I could see if I could get somebody to cover for me. In fact, my colleague might be able to cover for me on the one in the afternoon in Tiverton. Yeah,
Okay.
that might be possible.
So you could cancel a meeting or get your colleague to cover.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else could you do?
Well, I suppose I could get somebody else to write the report for me.
Yeah.
But by the time I explained it to the person and shown them what to do, I probably could have done it myself in the first place. I'm not sure that would really be much use to me.
No, okay, but an option. So you could get someone else to write it.
Yeah.
Okay. One more.
One more. I could take the report home and do it in the evening. But actually, that wouldn't be very popular with my family because I've made a commitment not to do that anymore.
Okay.
But I could do that.
So as an option, it's possible you
Yeah.
could take the report home to do in the evening. Okay. So I'm just going to go back over some of the options you've come up with and summarize them back again. Okay. So you could not do the report at all. All right.
Yeah.
You could get someone else to write it for you. You could ask your boss to extend the deadline, possibly.
Yeah.
You could maybe cancel your meeting on Wednesday afternoon or get your colleague to cover for you, which would give you some time. And then there is the option of taking it home, but obviously that affects your work-life balance and isn't good for you and your family. So out of those options, which one seems the most realistic for you to take forwards?
I quite like the idea of cancelling or getting my colleague to stand in for me on my meeting on Wednesday afternoon. Because if I did that, that would mean I'd start the report a day earlier. And then if I didn't get it finished, then I'd have the next day to finish it. So there'd be a lot less stress there. Actually, I like that one best, I think.
Okay, so that sounds all possible. So just as a contingency though, what would happen if your colleague wasn't able to cover? What could you do?
I don't know. I suppose I'd have to do it on the Thursday then, and I'll just have to make sure that there weren't any distractions and that I could just get on with it.
Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least likely it's going to happen, and 10 being you're absolutely going to go ahead with the action you've come up with.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you?
I think I'm about 7.
A 7. Okay, 7's good. But what would need to happen to make it a 10 so that you'd be definite?
Don't know really. I suppose if we agreed that I could tell you when I've done it, then that would definitely make me do it because I would know then I had to do it.
Okay, so having someone accountable.
Yeah.
And you'd like me to do that.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No, okay, that's fine. So you can give me a call and let me know exactly when you need to have taken that action.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about getting the report done now?
Really good, actually. I hadn't thought of those possibilities, and it all seemed too much, and now it seems a lot simpler. It's clarified it for me. It feels as if I can do it. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. No, it's my pleasure. Okay, so we better start to think about getting another date in the diary.
Okay.
And you letting me know when you'll be able to get in touch with me to let me know you've done that.
Yeah, I should be able to do that actually after this. And
Okay, so that is the second of the videos. who might have a comment around it?
Hi everyone,
Yes.
we're here today to talk to you about the GROW model.
Sorry, that's the next video that we're going to look at. So what comments or questions or thoughts do you have about that? I imagine you have done something like that without even knowing that you've done it, like using an intentional model around it. Elaine?
I was just thinking this scenario probably feels like the next 2 minutes for all of us as we're problem solving the next issue. I know my week is crazy. I'm doing the same thing today going, I got to get this done. My deadline is this. What's got to give?
Right. Yeah, so it's very realistic and something all of you could be coached on. Is that what you're saying? Well, Elaine, you and I could do it. Could figure out your schedule for the week. Could do a little bit of a coaching today as well if you're interested. Who else might have a comment? Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to give you guys another break because I was so late in giving you that last one. And I just really sense that the energy is wavering. And I can totally appreciate that. It's not only just in the class, but the fact of how long we've been going at it and how drained you are. So I totally get that. So why don't we take 10 minutes? I'll pull you back in like about 25 after. And then we're going to watch this video and we'll see where we go from there. Okay. All right. Okay, everyone, come on back. You can just let me know you're here by popping your video on, so I know that we can start. If you're there, let me know. Okay, we are going to get started and we'll get those people back with us. So this is just another coaching example using Grow. And just take a look, and if there's any questions that really appeal to you as they're having this conversation, you might just want to jot them down. This one goes a little bit more in depth, but again, because it's in such a short time frame, they really don't discuss everything that they potentially could. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about your own potential coaching sessions.
It's a really popular coaching model, which I'm sure many of you will have come across already. Great for leaders, line managers, and also new coaches will tend to be coaching using a framework. But I also believe that even the most experienced coaches can learn something from revisiting the coaching basics and coaching models. They often do shine a light on the fact that maybe you're skipping like generating options and using creativity, or maybe not spending enough time sometimes really delving into the action. So I think, you know, something like the Grow model is always useful to revisit, no matter what stage you are at. So we're going to do this via a demonstration. So for those of you that aren't familiar, the Grow model is from John Whitmore, and it's used really widely across the coaching field. And it stands for goals, so that's the G, R, reality, O, options, sometimes outcomes, and W, which is way forward or will. So you find different versions of the model. And this is a book that is often recommended. It's by John Whitmore and contains a lot of information about the Grow model. So you'll see from that Grow can be both simple, but also can have many layers to it. And we refer to it as a semi-structure for a conversation, or you might think about it as a hanger. And of course, it gives you with confidence when you're in a conversation, you don't know what's going to come up. If you know, broadly speaking, what is the flow, and you can be very transparent with the person that you're talking with. Hey, how about we use the Grow model in order to explore this goal that you want to set yourself, and we can explore how things are for you at the moment, what your options are, and then create an action plan for moving forward with it. How does that sound for you? And people are going to say, that sounds great. And so they'll know when you're asking the questions where they are, because okay, so we've got a good understanding of your goal. Now let's move on to the next stage. So that's how you can use it as a manager, just as easily as you can use it as a coach in the coaching conversations. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be the coach for this demonstration, and Zoe is going to be the coachee. Yeah. Okay, so Zoe, what is your goal? Yeah, so as you know, Jo, we've been looking to launch the ILM coaching level 3. So, coaching for managers and people who want to dip their toe in the water to gain some coaching skills. It's self-guided. So it's thinking about how to launch that. So I suppose the goal is to launch the ILM coaching and mentoring level 3. Okay. And when do you want to do this by? I want to do it by January, which feels a little bit like a funny time to be launching stuff because it's
sort of around Christmas. I think it's for me, I feel like I want it launched so I can almost see how it lands, you know, see what sort of feedback we're getting from the market, and also to have that milestone out of the way so I can, you know, we can refine and build for future launches.
And how will you know when you've achieved it?
Well, it will be out there, I suppose. It will be launched. So I guess like evidence criteria would be, well, people can buy it. So that's a good one. That we will have customers, you know, I think something, you know, to have launched it and for that. No, I'm going to take that back actually. We don't have to have had customers to have launched it. My hope is that we will, of course, but to focus actually just on launching it as the piece that I'm in control of.
And what is the date for the launch?
I don't actually have that yet. So the date for the launch will be the 15th of January.
Okay.
I'll do some contracting with you on that later.
So your goal is to launch the ILM in effective coaching at level 3 as a self-guided program on the 15th of January, and the launch means that it will be available for people to buy as a self-guided program.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in that goals section there is I was asking Zoe a few questions just to get very specific about the goal that she wants to achieve, which is why I was asking questions about when exactly, and was asking questions around the evidence criteria, how will you know that you've achieved it? And there are a number of different questions you can ask at that level. So if you're interested in getting a selection of questions for each of these 4 different levels, the goal, reality, options, and way forward, you can email us at info@igcompany.co.uk, and we can share with you what shall we call it? A sheet of about 70 questions that you can use within Grow. You can go through and highlight your favorites, and it might extend your questioning range. So let's move forward now into reality, Zoe, and explore what the current situation is. So can you share with us what your current situation is in relation to this goal?
Yeah, so it's something that I'll just talk from eyes. It's something I've had on the radar for some time. Like we've put out to market our level 5 coaching qualifications and the level 7, and the level 3 is like the last part. So so there's a real energy behind getting it launched because it's then the full suite. I know it's something, you know, that I feel really excited by, but it's also been a long time in the making. So from a real selfish perspective, to have ticked it off, like there's that sense of achievement in being able to do that. So so that's kind of some of the reality. In terms of the launch itself, it's not something I've really given a huge amount of thought to. So the focus has very much been on building the content and creating the product without having really the time or space to have given much thought to the launch. So I guess that's what this is useful for right now.
Okay. And what strikes you about being crucial to your success based on where you're at now?
Crucial to success is it's getting it done, you know, to the usual high standards of quality, but it's like it's the final hurdle. So it's all the hard work's been done, so this is the final hurdle. So actually getting it done, putting it out there, that is ultimately what's crucial to success, and obviously being proud of the way in which we do that.
And what skills or strengths do you have that will enable you to overcome any obstacles that you might face?
Well, when it comes to launching, I think some of the biggest obstacles is the tech. So, and I do have that in me to be able to do. Obviously, you could outsource it as well, but I think certainly for the first go around to have the ability to, you know, to build, you know, whatever it is that we choose to do to launch it. So that's an obvious one. I think I've got the drive, determination, the will, the excitement, the motivation, all of that stuff, but the obstacles will probably be in the detail.
Okay, so we've identified that your goal is to launch the level 3 program on 15th of January as a self-guided program. The current reality is that you have got to decide on a plan as to how you're going to launch it, and you need to put time and attention into that launch and agree with me how we're going to do that. So we've learned a bit more about your reality, and obviously if we were in a coaching conversation we would explore this a bit more, but for the sake of the demo we're going to move into the options phase. So what ideas do you have for the launch?
Do you know that some of it could just be a really soft launch around just send out the emails to our email list, some posts on social media, and if people are interested they can just even create a Word document, you know, and make that available to people. So to keep it really straightforward, really simple, could do that. That would definitely be quick. At the other end, we could do like a full campaign, you know, of several weeks of, you know, marketing about it, you know, reaching out to ideal clients. We don't do sales calls, but it's an option, right? Like we could do approaches to people who we think might be interested.
What could you do if you had all the resources, all the support, all the money, all the freedom in the world?
Wow, outsource the whole thing. That's actually I would. I think I'd outsource the whole thing to some kind of agency to say, right, we've got this fantastic product. Could you do the launch for us? That would be great.
And what would you do if you weren't afraid?
I don't feel much fear in relation to this. It's more excitement than, you know, I would have felt fear. I think, you know, years ago, I'd have held back from launching stuff for fear that no one would buy it. I don't have that fear. Like if no one buys it, we just haven't got the launch right. I'm okay with that. It's a great product. So no, I'm more like keen to go than I am afraid. So.
Okay, great. And what would you do if you had a magic wand?
Magic wand. What would I do if I had a magic wand? I would, do you know what comes to mind actually is a lot of the back end systems that we would need. So because it's self-guided, you know, ultimately, I think what I would like is for people to be able to purchase it online and get access to the program, have, you know, an appointment with their kind of tutor and supervisor and to get going. So actually, I'd magic wand all of that into place so that it's not really just about the launch, but it's also about the customer experience that comes, you know, once somebody has kind of purchased it. So that's what I would use the wand for.
Can you summarize the options that you've identified so far?
So outsource the whole thing, really soft launch. You know, having a you know, the back end kind of processes you know, resolved. And probably one that I haven't explicitly mentioned but comes to mind now is somewhere in the middle of those soft launch and fully outsourced launch, which is perhaps using someone to help with a launch which is a halfway house. So maybe doing some webinars and helping people to understand what, you know, what the qualification is, what coaching is, and whether they might be interested, adding some value to people as part of the process as well.
Okay, great. And again, we could explore more here. I could ask Zoe, okay, can you share with me 3 more examples, and many other questions that we can share with you in the resource that you can have access to. So let's move forward for the demo into the way forward, or it's sometimes called WILL for the W. Out of the options that you've identified, which one do you think will have the greatest impact?
Greatest impact. I think it's the halfway house. I like the idea of adding value to people, whether they choose to buy the program or not. I think anything to raise, awareness of coaching in the profession and what it is, and the impact it has, feels like that's in line with my values. I know our values, so I think that's the one that feels like that would have the biggest impact.
And which option would be fastest?
The easy one, which the soft launch would be the fastest. Yeah.
Okay. And which would be the most daring?
For us, the most daring would be to outsource the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is useful to notice that.
So which of these options do you have most energy for moving forward with and taking action on?
Right now, the middle option, adding value through doing some webinars and reaching people who might naturally be interested in the level 3 as a way to introduce themselves to coaching.
So what's the first next step?
First next step is to agree with you that is what we do, and then get some dates in the diary, assuming you are applicable, to plan those webinars and the action steps, I suppose, that we would need to kind of take that forward.
Okay. And we would explore other questions here around the support that you need, any barriers that might come up. We might explore the impact. So questions like, what are the benefits for you if you take these actions? We'd look at gaining commitment. So how committed on a scale of 0 to 10 are you? So let's just check in with you, Zoe. How committed are you on a scale of 0 to 10 to take those first steps?
Yeah, easy 10, yeah.
And we'd also explore about how the person's going to keep themselves on course. And that'll be questions like, when things are going well, what will you be feeling? What will be the early signs that things might be going off track? How might you sabotage yourself? And then we would also put a plan in for that at that very early stage to ensure success.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can see from here, there are many, many, many questions for Grow, and that isn't an exhaustive list. We hope that by taking you through the example today, that has given you confidence as a manager or as a coach to experiment with it, with transparency, using it in line with your values and how you are in your authentic way, but using it as a semi-structure to help people move forward in a way that helps them to achieve their goals in alignment with their values. So that's Grow in a nutshell for you. Love to hear your thoughts about it. If you'd like to join us in our Facebook group, The Coaching Crowd, it's a collection of people who are interested in self-development and also developing others. So anybody with a passion for coaching, you don't need to be an experienced or qualified coach. You might be somebody with an interest in it. You can also find our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. Jo Wheatley and Zoe Hawkins.
Thanks very much.
All right. So, how did you guys feel about that? And the video and the coaching piece?
Okay.
Comments, questions, thoughts? Anything?
The questions are helpful. I wrote some down.
Okay. So you know what, guys? You seem really tired today, and we're really at a good place. So I am honestly thinking about just letting you go. There isn't a lot more other than conversation that we can have at this point before we head into next week. And I just don't think that you're in a you don't have the mental energy to have another conversation. So I'm thinking we're just gonna leave it at that today. Just remember to come up or bring with you next week something that you can be coached around when it comes to the GROW model. And I'll be getting out the coaching toolkit in this week before we meet up for our final session next week. Okay? Okay, guys, you have a good rest of the week. It's hump days, or no, tomorrow's hump day. So
Have a good week.
it's downhill from there. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.